Okay, we're doing lecture 23, part 2, which is going to be talking about the vertex form. Before we get into the vertex form, I do want us to go over completing the square because this is going to come into play with what we are doing today. So if you guys remember, when we complete the square, the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure there's not a number in front of that x squared, okay, which there is not a number in front of it. So I've got x squared plus 8x. And then I need to move that 9 over to the other side of the equation. So completing the square is when we are going to use our magic number. So to find my magic number, I'm going to take my 8, and I need to take 8 divided by 2, and 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. Okay, and then after I divide it by 2, I'm going to need to square it, which 2 squared gives me 16. And that 16 is my magic number. So that 16 has to get added on both sides of the equations. It has to get added on both sides so that this stays balanced for us. Okay? Then, once I do that, that magic number allowed me to force this thing to factor. Okay? It forces it to factor into x something squared. So what is the something that goes in the space? Well, that would be our secret number. And that secret number is a positive 4. So I end up with x plus 4 squared equals 25. Now from here, this is where I just went through and I solved it. So I would square root both sides. That gives me an x plus 4 equals plus or minus 5. And I had x plus 4 equals 5. And x plus 4 equals negative 5. So I found that x equaled 1 and x equaled negative 9. Okay? Now, as far as what we are doing today, when we're using the vertex form, is we are going to need to know these steps right there. This other part down below is not really pertinent to what we're doing, but you are going to need to know how to handle these steps right there because when we convert problems into the vertex form, we are going to have to complete the square in order to do that. Okay? So let's talk about what the vertex form is. I don't know why that is doing that. Can I get out of it? And then mark it back up. There we go. Perfect. Good job, Mr. Schieber. Okay, new form of a quadratic formula. So we have been going over the standard form, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and this is really good as far as telling if you need to find the x-intercepts because you can find the x-intercepts by factoring, and it's also very easy to find the y-intercept. Now, we have gone over how to also find the vertex out of this form. However, the vertex form, which is something that you guys have seen before, because in exam 3, I would have you guys graph things like y equals x minus 2 squared plus 3, where it was a parabola that was shifted to the right 2 and then up 3, okay? That is what we've used to use our shifts in the past. That is called the vertex form, okay? So the A really tells you the same thing, and that's really honestly not that important, okay? The important part is that the h, that part in that minus h, is going to be the x coordinate of the vertex, and the k is going to be the y coordinate of the vertex, which we never really explicitly talked about, but you guys can see if I shift from 0, 0, and I shift to the right 2 and up 3, that would mean that my vertex was at 2, 3. Okay, so the vertex form is helpful to use because it's easy to find what the vertex is. It's just right there in front of you. Okay, so we're going to practice finding the vertex or converting this to the vertex form in one of these equations here. Okay, and then after we do that in the second video, we'll have 3 more examples that I want to try with you guys. Okay, so starting out, I have f of x equals negative x squared plus 6x minus 5. Okay, so first thing that you have to do is you have to factor out any number that is in front of the x squared. So for this problem here, there is technically a negative 1 in front of that x squared. Now, when I factor out the number that's in front of the x squared, I'm only going to factor it out from the first two terms. So I'm going to pull out a -1 just from these two here, which will give me I'm going to change the color of this, which will then give me a -1 on the outside. And on the inside, I have an x squared minus 6x. Now, remember how we would leave a space for the magic number? We're going to leave a space in parentheses for the magic number there. And then the -5 is going to go on the outside. And the reason is we can't, move that -5. We can't move it over to this side of the equation because that's where the y is. So instead, we're going to move it on the outside of the parentheses, and then we're going to leave a space in the parentheses there for our magic number. Okay? So first step, you're going to factor out the number that is in front of the first x squared there. Okay? Notice I only factored it out of the first two terms. And also notice I didn't factor out the x. I left the x there. I just factor out the number that is in front of the x squared term. Okay? So, got that done. Now I'm ready to complete the square. So, I need to take my middle term, which would be my -6, and I'm going to take -6 divided by 2, which gives me -3. And then I'm going to take my -3 squared, which -3 squared gives me 9. Okay? So I'm going to add my magic number in here. Okay? However, remember, we added it on one side, we had to keep it balanced, so we had to add it to the other side as well. But again, I don't want to add it to the other side because that's where the y is. So instead, I want to subtract to keep it balanced. So I am going to subtract, and also I'm not just going to subtract a 9 because technically that 9 there, if I'm looking at my 9 right here, that's technically a -1 times 9 that I am subtracting. Okay, so I am going to subtract then a -1 times that +9. Okay, so again, I added 9 in there, so I need to subtract a -1 times a 9 on that side. Okay, all right, now we're almost done here, just a few more steps. So I end up with y equals, I did not mean to put parentheses there, y equals -1 times, now remember, I set this up, I forced it to factor into an x something squared. I forced it to factor into an x something squared. So what goes in there? Well, that is going to be my secret number, which would be a -3. Now, on the outside of the parentheses, I'm just ready to simplify. I have a -5, two negatives there, make that a positive. So that's a +1 times 9, which gives me a +9. And then the last thing that I need to do is just simply simplify. So I got an x minus 3 squared, -5 plus 9 gives me +4. And this is the vertex form of the parabola. Okay? Now from that, I need to tell what the vertex is. So if we remember, -3 on the inside, we do the opposite. That's going to shift to the right 3. So that makes that a +3. And then on the outside, we do what it says. So it's going to go up 4. So our vertex is at 3, 4. Okay? And then my axis of symmetry, remember your axis of symmetry is just x equals the x coordinate of your vertex. So it'd be x equals 3. Okay? And these are the 3 things that you're going to have to answer on your homework when you guys are doing these here. Now, I am fully aware this seems like a lot of steps. Okay? Make sure you are listening to this problem. We are going to just do this over and over and over again. And by the time you do it, it's the same set of steps every single time. So by the time you finish it, you will start to get into the pattern of it, and you guys will be okay. Take a deep breath, watch this next video, okay? And we're going to go over 3 more examples with this.